Hi there, welcome to Bobby's Tales channel, your home for fun stories, crazy twists, and a splash of good humor. If you enjoy surprises, clever paybacks, and stories that make you smile, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and let's jump into the next adventure together.
My family life cracked like the foundation of an old house.
I used to think my wife's only secret was adding kale to the chili. Turns out, I was about as wrong as a man could be without actually being dead. My name is Alex Kavanaugh. Friends call me Lex. And I'm a structural engineer in the kind of mid-sized American town where everyone knows your business before you do. At 41, I thought I had life figured out. Nice house, decent job, 2 great kids, and a wife who still turned heads at the grocery store. Jessica was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, ambitious, and charming enough to make our neighbors forget I wore steel-toed boots to work while she wore designer heels to her consulting meetings. Another business trip? I asked that Tuesday morning, watching Jess pack her expensive luggage with the kind of precision she brought to everything. Sam, our 14-year-old, was scarfing down cereal while our 10-year-old daughter Lila practiced piano badly enough to wake the dead. Chicago this time, Jess said without looking up. Big client. Could be a game changer for the firm. She'd been having a lot of game changers lately. 3 trips in 2 months, each one making her more distant, more polished, more like a stranger wearing my wife's face. How long? 4 days, maybe 5? She kissed my cheek. Duty, not affection. Can you handle the kids? Like I hadn't been handling them every other time she disappeared. Sure thing, honey. The sarcasm was lost on her, but Sam caught it. He shot me a look that said he was starting to notice things too. Smart kid. Sometimes I wished he wasn't quite so observant. After Jess left in her BMW, another recent upgrade, I settled into our routine. Work, kids, dinner, homework, bed, rinse and repeat. It should have been comfortable, but something felt off, like a building with a hairline crack in the foundation. You can't see it, but you know it's there, waiting to bring everything down. Thursday night changed everything. Dad, Mom left her tablet, Sam called from the living room. Should I text her? She's probably got her phone, just leave it on her desk. But Sam was already fiddling with it, and I heard him make a sound, part confusion, part disgust. The kind of sound that makes a parent's blood run cold. Dad, you need to see this. I found him staring at the screen with the expression of someone who just watched their childhood die. The tablet showed a video folder labeled Gallery, and the thumbnail was enough to make my world tilt sideways. My wife, my Jessica, wrapped around a man who definitely wasn't me. Sam, go to your room. But Dad, now. He handed me the tablet like it might explode and disappeared upstairs. Smart kid knew when not to argue. I sat in my favorite chair, the one Jess always said clashed with her decorating scheme, and opened Pandora's box. 23 videos, hotels, restaurants, even our house when I was at work. The man was always the same, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that sold expensive cars and broken promises. I recognized him from around town, Grant Pritchard, local real estate hotshot who drove a Range Rover and wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage. The timestamps went back 8 months. 8 months of business trips and networking events and client dinners. 8 months of me being the biggest fool in town. But here's the thing about being a structural engineer. You learn to think methodically, even when your world is collapsing. Especially then. I copied every file to a secure drive, documented dates and locations, cross-referenced them with Jess's calendar. By midnight, I had a complete dossier of my wife's affair, organized with the same precision I brought to building inspections. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Miss Fortin, it's Alex Kavanaugh. I need to discuss divorce proceedings. I'm sorry to hear that, Alex. What's the situation? Cheating. Multiple instances. Video evidence. A pause. How solid is your evidence? Concrete and steel solid. Can you be in my office this afternoon? Already on my way. Margaret Fortin was the kind of lawyer who wore sensible shoes and carried a briefcase that had seen more courtroom battles than a war correspondent. She reviewed my evidence with the clinical detachment of a coroner examining a corpse. This is comprehensive, she said finally. And damning. What do you want? Full custody, the house, and I want her to know exactly why she's losing everything. Revenge isn't usually the best. Not revenge. Justice. There's a difference. She smiled. the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her. There certainly is. Let's discuss strategy. Nothing says welcome home like echoing walls and divorce papers. I'd spent Jess's extended business trip making arrangements. The kids were staying with my brother Pete, ex-cop turned private investigator who'd helped me document everything. Our furniture was in storage except for the essentials. The house felt like a museum exhibit. Here lived a family, before the wife decided to audition for amateur adult content. Jess's BMW pulled into our driveway at 6:47 p.m. on Sunday. I watched from the kitchen window as she grabbed her designer luggage, probably still glowing from her latest romantic adventure with Grant. She looked beautiful, relaxed, satisfied. It was the last time she'd looked that way for a long while. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floors I'd installed myself 2 summers ago, back when I thought we were building something permanent. Alex, where is everything? Where are the kids? I appeared in the doorway, holding a manila envelope that contained her future. Welcome home, sweetheart. How was Chicago? She froze, reading my expression like a weather report predicting storms. What's going on? Why does the house look like this? Funny thing about Chicago, I said, settling into my remaining chair. I called the Palmer house. You know, where you said you were staying. They don't have any record of Jessica Kavanaugh checking in this week. Her face went through a fascinating transformation. Confusion to understanding to panic in about 3 seconds. Alex, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You always were good with words. But before you start, you should probably look at this. I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Consider it a highlight reel of your recent performances. She opened it with trembling fingers. Divorce papers, custody filing, and a flash drive labeled The Gallery Collection. When she saw the first printed screenshot, she made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. Oh God, Alex, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been screwing Grant Pritchard in half the hotels between here and the state line? That you brought him into our house, our bed, while I was working to pay for your BMW and designer clothes and spa weekends? She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black rain. It wasn't supposed to happen. We connected, and I was lonely, and you were always working. I was working to support my family. Silly me, thinking that included a faithful wife. Please, Alex. The kids are staying with Pete until this gets sorted out. Don't worry, I didn't show them the extended director's cut. Sam stumbling across your tablet was traumatic enough. That hit her like a physical blow. Sam saw... Enough. He's 14, Jess. He knows what Zex looks like, and he knows what his mother looks like, and he's smart enough to do the math. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. A month ago, this would have broken my heart. Now it just felt like watching a building demolition. Messy, but necessary. What do you want? She whispered. Full custody, the house, and for you to disappear from our lives as cleanly as possible. I'll fight you. With what? Your video collection? Good luck explaining those to a family court judge. I'm sure the PTA will be very understanding, too. Her phone started buzzing. Text after text, call after call. I'd made sure Candace Wheeler, Jess's gossipy real estate agent friend, got an anonymous tip about the affair. In a town this size, news traveled faster than a grease fire. You coward! Jess hissed, finally showing some fire. You sent those pictures to people? Just shared some highlights with concerned friends. You always said I should be more social. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. Candace, I can't talk right now. What? No, that's not... Who told you that? She looked at me with pure hatred. I have to go. Let me guess, I said. Word's getting around. Small towns, you know. People talk. You're destroying my life. No, sweetheart, you did that yourself. I'm just making sure everyone gets to see the show. She stood up, trying to salvage some dignity. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Check the papers. You have 30 days to respond. I'd suggest you find a good lawyer, and maybe a new town. After she left, I poured myself a scotch and sat in my empty house. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful instead of ominous. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. I'm no Philip Marlowe, but I know a rat when I smell one, and Grant Pritchard reeked like a landfill in August. Pete met me at Murphy's Bar the next evening, sliding into the booth with the easy confidence of a man who'd spent 20 years reading people's secrets in their faces. At 52, my brother was everything I wasn't: smooth, cynical, and completely comfortable with the darker side of human nature. "So," he said, ordering a beer, "how'd our girl take the news?" "About as well as you'd expect. Tears, denials, threats to fight for custody. With her starring role in Housewives Gone Wild." "Good luck with that." Pete pulled out a manila folder. "Speaking of which, I did some digging on your wife's co-star." Grant Pritchard's life spread across the table in photographs and documents. Born in Connecticut, moved here 5 years ago after a messy divorce. Owned Pritchard Properties, specialized in high-end developments. Drove a Range Rover, lived in a McMansion on Elm Street, and apparently had a type: married women with money and flexible morals. "This isn't his first rodeo," Pete said, pointing to a surveillance photo of Grant with a blonde I didn't recognize. "That's Linda Morrison, married to the bank president. This was taken last month." "While he was still seeing Jess?" "Your wife wasn't his only extracurricular activity. Guy's running a regular rotation." The information hit me like a cold slap. I'd thought Jess was special, that their affair meant something. Finding out she was just another notch on Grant's expensive belt somehow made it worse. "There's more," Pete continued. "He's got a business partner, Marcus Webb, handles the, let's say, delicate aspects of Grant's lifestyle." "What kind of delicate aspects?" "Cleanup. When affairs get messy, Marcus makes them go away, pays off husbands, intimidates witnesses, handles NDAs. He's the reason Grant's been operating with impunity." I studied Marcus's photo. Thick-necked, permanent scowl, hands that looked like they'd never held anything more delicate than a crowbar. "So what's the play?" I asked. Pete grinned. "We make Grant's life as complicated as he made yours. But we do it smart and we do it legal." The next morning, I called in sick and spent the day learning everything I could about Grant Pritchard. His business, his habits, his weaknesses. By noon, I had a plan. Grant's Range Rover was parked outside the country club when I found it. Beautiful machine, silver paint, leather interior, the kind of car that screamed success and attracted married women like a magnet. It would be a shame if something happened to it. I popped the hood and got to work. 20 minutes later, I'd filled the air intake with frozen shrimp and loosened the brake lines just enough to make them spongy. Dangerous in an emergency, but not immediately life-threatening. Then I settled in to wait. Grant emerged from the club an hour later, checking his phone and probably arranging his next conquest. He climbed into his pride and joy, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. I followed at a distance, watching as he rolled down the windows, probably wondering about the smell. By the time he reached the first red light, the stench was unbearable. Grant pulled over, popped the hood, and discovered my little surprise. The look on his face as he stared at a pile of rotting seafood was worth every penny I'd spent at the fish market. But that was just the appetizer. That evening, Candace Wheeler's real estate office was hosting their monthly mixer, the kind of event where local professionals networked over cheap wine and expensive gossip. I made sure an anonymous email reached every attendee, complete with selected highlights from Jess and Grant's video collection. The party was supposed to start at 7. By 6:45, the parking lot looked like a traffic jam at a car accident, everyone trying to get in to see the show. I watched from across the street as Grant arrived, oblivious to the storm waiting for him. He strutted through the front door like he owned the place, probably expecting the usual mix of admiration and business opportunities. Instead, he walked into a room full of people who'd spent the last hour watching him perform for Jess's camera. The silence was deafening. Grant made it exactly 12 minutes before fleeing through the back exit, his face red as a stop sign. Several women followed him out, not admirers, but wives whose husbands had just learned some very interesting facts about their local real estate hero. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. "Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? I typed back. "Let's give Mr. Pritchard something to really worry about." The war was just getting started. The courthouse steps felt like a stage, and I was finally ready for my starring role. Miss Fortin met me outside family court wearing her battle armor, a navy blue suit that had intimidated opposing counsel for 20 years. She carried a briefcase that probably weighed more than my daughter, packed with enough evidence to bury Jess's custody case 6 feet deep. "Ready for this?" she asked. "Been ready for months?" Jess arrived with her lawyer, some slick downtown type who charged by the syllable and dressed like he was heading to a yacht club. Richard Blackwood, according to his business card. The kind of man who probably thought he could charm his way through family court like it was a cocktail party. "Mr. Kavanaugh." he said, extending a manicured hand. I hope we can resolve this amicably. That ship sailed when your client decided to start her own adult film company, I replied. Inside the courtroom, Judge Patricia Hendricks presided with the no-nonsense authority of someone who'd seen every variety of human stupidity. She was known for two things: fairness and an absolute intolerance for wasting her time. Blackwood opened with the standard playbook, portraying Jess as a devoted mother whose marriage had simply grown apart, suggesting that I was using the affair as a weapon to hurt her and the children. Your Honor, he said, in his practiced baritone, my client made a mistake. A human mistake born from loneliness in a marriage that had become more like a business arrangement than a partnership. She's willing to accept responsibility and work toward reconciliation. Then it was Miss Fortin's turn. Your Honor, we're not here to discuss marriage counseling. We're here because Mrs. Kavanaugh conducted an 8-month affair, documented it extensively, and exposed her minor children to her infidelity. This isn't a mistake. It's a pattern of behavior that demonstrates a fundamental lack of judgment and maternal responsibility. She opened her briefcase like she was unveiling the crown jewels. We have 23 videos, spanning 8 months, showing Mrs. Kavanaugh engaged in related to sex conduct with Grant Pritchard. These encounters took place in hotels, restaurants, and the family home while her children were at school. We also have financial records showing Mrs. Kavanaugh spent marital assets on hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts for her paramour. Blackwood tried to object, but Judge Hendricks had already seen enough. She reviewed the evidence with the clinical detachment of a pathologist, occasionally glancing at Jess with the kind of look usually reserved for people who parked in handicapped spaces. Mrs. Kavanaugh, the judge said finally, do you dispute the authenticity of this evidence? Jess looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. No, Your Honor. And you conducted this affair in the marital home? Yes, Your Honor. While your children lived there? They were at school. That's not what I asked. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it was over, I had temporary full custody, possession of the house, and a restraining order keeping Jess away from the kids, except for supervised visits. But the real victory was happening outside the courthouse. Pete had been busy during the hearing, distributing printed copies of select evidence to every parent waiting in the hallway. By the time we emerged, half the town knew exactly what Jessica Kavanaugh had been doing with her free time. How'd it go? Pete asked, though my expression probably told the whole story. Complete victory. What's the word on the street? Grant's in hiding. 3 wives have filed for divorce after seeing your evidence, and the country club revoked his membership. Marcus Webb is making noise about retaliation, but he's smart enough to know he's outgunned. And Jess? Persona non grata. Candace Wheeler won't return her calls. The yoga studio asked her not to come back, and someone spray-painted home wrecker on her BMW. I should have felt guilty about that last part, but I didn't. Actions have consequences, and Jess was finally learning that lesson. That evening, I picked up Sam and Lila from Pete's house. They were quiet during the drive home, processing everything that had happened. Dad? Lila asked as we pulled into our driveway. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Yes, sweetheart, we are. Because of what she did with that man? Kids see everything, understand more than we think, because your mother made choices that hurt our family. Will we still see her? Of course. She's still your mother and she loves you. But things are going to be different now. Sam hadn't said much, but as we walked into the house, he put his hand on my shoulder. Dad, I'm glad you found out. It wasn't right what she was doing. 14 years old, and already wiser than his mother. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my chair and planned the next phase. Grant Pritchard thought he could destroy families without consequences. Marcus Webb thought intimidation would make me back down. They were both about to learn how wrong they could be. Marcus Webb looked like the kind of man who solved problems with his knuckles and asked questions later. At 6'3" and built like a concrete mixer, he probably thought intimidation was just another business tool. He was about to get a crash course in physics. I was leaving my office Thursday evening when he appeared beside my truck, casual, like we'd planned to meet. In the empty parking garage, his presence felt deliberately menacing. Alex Kavanaugh? That's me. Marcus Webb. I work with Grant Pritchard. He stepped closer, invading my personal space with practiced ease. We need to talk. About what? About you backing off. This little game you're playing? It ends now. I looked around the garage, noting the security cameras, the concrete pillars, the hydraulic car lift in the maintenance bay. Sometimes being an engineer meant seeing solutions where other people saw problems. Game? I'm not playing games, Marcus. I'm just sharing some home movies with friends. His face darkened. You think you're funny? You've cost Grant 3 major deals this week. Respectable people don't want to do business with him anymore. Maybe he should have thought about that before he started collecting married women like baseball cards. Marcus grabbed my shirt, pulling me close enough to smell the coffee and menace on his breath. You're going to delete those videos. You're going to call off your lawyer, and you're going to disappear quietly, or things are going to get very unpleasant for you and your kids. That's when I made my move. The car lift controls were right behind Marcus, and I'd noticed the hydraulic lines were old, probably due for maintenance. A quick elbow to his solar plexus loosened his grip, and I spun away toward the lift controls. You threatening my children, Marcus? He came after me, but I was already at the control panel. The lift was positioned perfectly. Marcus was standing right in the center when I hit the emergency stop. The platform lurched upward, catching him off balance. What the hell? I activated the tilt function, designed for oil changes. Marcus found himself on a slowly rising platform that was angling toward vertical, with nothing to grab except air. Here's the thing about hydraulic systems, I called up to him as he scrambled for purchase on the smooth metal. They're perfectly safe when properly maintained, but these older models can be temperamental. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Say hello to YouTube, Marcus. You son of a... Let me down. In a minute. First, let's discuss your threat against my children. The platform was now at a 45-degree angle, with Marcus clinging to the edge like a very large, very angry cat. His tough guy demeanor had evaporated along with his dignity. I wasn't serious about the kids. Good to know. Now, about Grant's business problems. Are you planning to blame me for his reputation issues? This is abducting? This is a maintenance demonstration. Very educational. I zoomed in on his panicked face. Smile for the camera, Marcus. 20 minutes later, I lowered the platform and let him stumble away, his suit wrinkled and his ego thoroughly deflated. The video was already uploading to several social media accounts titled, Local Tough Guy Learns About Gravity. But Marcus was just the opening act. The next morning, Pete called with interesting news. Your wife and her boyfriend are planning something. I've been monitoring their communications. They're talking about framing you for domestic violence. How? Fake injuries, false police reports, witnesses who'll swear they saw you hit her. Classic playbook for flipping a custody case. The audacity was breathtaking. After everything Jess had done, she was still looking for ways to make me the villain. When? Soon, maybe this weekend when you're supposed to have the kids. I thought about Sam and Lila, about the stable home we were finally building, about the life Jess wanted to destroy just to avoid facing consequences. Then we'd better make sure Grant's too busy to help her. Saturday morning, I drove to Baxter's Hardware, the kind of old-school store where you could still buy everything from mousetraps to industrial adhesive. I had a shopping list and a plan. Grant was already there, probably picking up supplies for one of his development projects. He looked haggard, like a man who hadn't slept well since his world started collapsing. When he saw me, his face went through several interesting color changes. You! He snarled. Me, I agreed. Nice to see you too, Grant. How's business? He stepped closer, and I could smell the desperation on him like cheap cologne. You destroyed my life. I shared some videos. You destroyed your own life when you decided to star in them. I'm going to make you pay for this. With what? Your ruined reputation? Your fleeing clients? Or are you planning to send Marcus after me again? Because that worked out so well last time. Grant's face flushed red. You think you're so smart? Smart enough to know when I'm being threatened in a public place with security cameras. I gestured toward the ceiling-mounted cameras. But please, continue making threats. I'm sure the police will find them very interesting. He lunged at me then, all pretense of civilization abandoned. But I was ready. The paint display was right behind me, gallon cans stacked on a promotional pyramid. I stepped aside as Grant charged, and his momentum carried him straight into the display. Paint cans crashed down around him, several bursting open and coating him in a rainbow of latex house paint. The store's other customers stopped and stared as Grant flailed in the paint puddle, looking like a very angry abstract art project. Someone started filming with their phone. Clean up on aisle 7, I called to the store manager, then looked down at Grant. You know, all those houses you built, Grant, but you never learned how to make a home. Maybe because you were too busy wrecking other people's. Grant tried to stand, slipped in the paint, and went down again. The crowd was growing, phones appearing like flowers after rain. This isn't over, he gasped. Actually, it is. See, the difference between us is that I build things that last. You just make messes that other people have to clean up. I walked away, leaving Grant wallowing in pain and humiliation, while half the town watched and recorded. By evening, the video would be viral. By Monday, what was left of his reputation would be completely gone. But the real victory came that night, when Pete called with an update. Grant missed his meeting with Jess. Apparently, he's too busy trying to explain to his insurance company why he's covered in paint. Without his support, she's not going through with the false accusation plan. Good. What about Marcus? Lying low. Turns out being a YouTube sensation isn't good for the intimidation business. I hung up and looked around my house. Our house, mine, and the kids. For the first time in months, it felt like home again. Tomorrow, I'd start planning the final act. The storm hit on a Tuesday night in November, the kind of weather that made you grateful for solid walls and good locks. I was helping Lila with her math homework when the power flickered, and something cold crawled up my spine. Dad, the lights are acting funny, she said. Just the storm, sweetheart. Why don't you go finish this upstairs? I'll check the breakers. She gathered her books and headed for the stairs, and I moved to the front window. Grant's Range Rover sat in my driveway like a threat, engine running, headlights cutting through the rain. My phone buzzed. Pete. Lex, we've got problems. Grant's been drinking at Murphy's for 3 hours, telling anyone who'll listen that he's going to settle things with you tonight. Marcus is with him. They're here. What? I'm 15 minutes away? No time. Call the police, but keep your distance. If this goes bad, I don't want you caught in it. I hung up and activated the security system I'd installed after the courthouse hearing. Cameras, motion sensors, and a few modifications that weren't exactly standard home security features. Sam! Lila! Come downstairs now! They appeared at the top of the stairs, sensing the urgency in my voice. What's wrong, Dad? Remember the emergency plan we practiced? I need you to go to the safe room and lock the door. Don't come out until I say it's safe. The safe room was actually the reinforced basement storage area, equipped with a phone, water, and a steel door that could stop a small tank. I'd built it after Marcus's first visit, hoping I'd never need it. Is it Mom? Sam asked. No, son. It's the man she was seeing. He's not thinking clearly right now. The front door exploded inward just as the kids disappeared downstairs. Grant stood in the doorway, soaked and furious, with Marcus looming behind him like a malevolent shadow. Kavanaugh! Grant's voice carried the slurred edge of liquid courage. Time to settle this! I stepped into the living room, hands visible, posture non-threatening. The cameras were recording everything, streaming live to cloud storage and Pete's phone. Grant, Marcus, lovely evening for a home invasion. You destroyed my life, Grant snarled, stepping into my house like he owned it. My business, my reputation, everything. You did that yourself. I just provided the documentation. Marcus closed the door behind them, sealing us in together. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Where are they? Grant demanded. Where are what? The videos, the originals. I want them destroyed. I almost laughed. Grant, this is the digital age. There are no originals. There are copies, and backups of copies, and backups of those backups. You can't uninvent your mistakes. He pulled out a crowbar, probably from his construction supplies, and hefted it like a weapon. Then I'll just have to make sure you can't make any more copies. That's not how this works. It's how it works tonight. Grant swung the crowbar at my head, and everything changed. I ducked, letting the weapon crash into the wall where I'd been standing. Drywall exploded, and Grant stumbled forward off balance. I'd spent weeks preparing for this possibility, turning my house into a maze of subtle traps and defensive positions. The living room lamp cord had been loosened, and when Grant stepped on it, the fixture came crashing down, missing his head by inches but tangling around his feet. He went down hard, cursing. Marcus charged me then, but I was already moving toward the kitchen. The floor there had been treated with a thin layer of cooking oil, invisible but treacherous. Marcus hit the slick surface at full speed and went sliding into the refrigerator with a crash that rattled the windows. You think you're clever? Grant roared, struggling to his feet. This is my town. These are my people. We're your people, I corrected. Past tense. Amazing how quickly friends disappear when they find out who you really are. I retreated toward the stairs, drawing them deeper into the house. The second floor was where I'd concentrated my defenses, using engineering principles to turn ordinary household items into obstacles and deterrents. Grant followed me up, Marcus close behind despite his collision with the appliance. At the top of the stairs, I triggered the first surprise. A tripwire connected to several paint cans filled with washable but sticky latex paint. The cans swung down like pendulums, catching both men across the chest and covering them in bright yellow paint. Grant screamed in rage, but Marcus just looked more dangerous, like an aggressor that had been wounded but not stopped. Enough games! Grant swung the crowbar again, this time connecting with the wall hard enough to punch through to the studs. I'm going to beat you to end, then burn this place down. With what? You're covered in water-based paint and standing under a sprinkler system. I'd modified the fire suppression system to trigger on command. Water cascaded from the ceiling, soaking all of us and washing the paint into colorful rivers on the hardwood floors. That's when I heard the sirens. Sounds like the cavalry's arriving, I said. You boys might want to consider surrendering. Instead, Grant went completely feral. He charged me with the crowbar raised, homicide in his eyes. I sidestepped and let him crash into the bathroom door, which I'd rigged with a simple but effective surprise. The door swung open to reveal a tripwire connected to several buckets of ice water. Grant took the full deluge in the face, the shock dropping him to his knees. Cold shower, Grant. I thought you might need one. Marcus made one last attempt to reach me, but his feet went out from under him on the wet, painted floor. He slid into the wall with enough force to crack the drywall, then lay there groaning. The front door burst open again, this time admitting Pete and 3 uniformed police officers. Everybody freeze! Officer Rodriguez shouted, though Grant and Marcus were already down and not going anywhere. Evening, officers, I called down from the top of the stairs. Welcome to the gallery showing. I think you'll find tonight's exhibition quite illuminating. The next hour was a blur of statements, arrests, and evidence collection. Grant was charged with breaking and entering, attack, and making terroristic threats. Marcus got similar charges, plus violation of his parole from a previous attack conviction. As they were led away in handcuffs, both men soaked and painted and thoroughly defeated, Grant made one last attempt at defiance. This isn't over, Kavanaugh. Actually, it is, I replied. See, the difference between us is that I know when to stop. You never learned that lesson. Pete clapped me on the shoulder as we watched the police cars disappear into the storm. Hell of a thing, brother. You okay? Better than okay. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. The kids emerged from the safe room, wide-eyed but unharmed. Sam looked around at the painted, water-soaked chaos of our house and shook his head. Dad, you're going to have to redecorate. Small price to pay, son. Small price to pay. # epilogue, the final frame. The courthouse was packed for the final hearing. Word had spread about the night of the break-in, and half the town wanted to see how the story ended. Judge Hendricks reviewed the police reports, the video evidence, and the testimony with her usual thoroughness. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Mrs. Kavanaugh, your conduct throughout this proceeding has demonstrated a fundamental lack of judgment and maternal responsibility. Your association with Mr. Pritchard, who is now facing criminal charges for his attack on your husband, further calls into question your ability to provide a stable environment for your children. Jess sat beside her lawyer, looking like a ghost of her former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by discount store outfits. The confident smile had been replaced by hollow eyes and premature lines. Mr. Kavanaugh, the judge continued, receives full custody of the minor children with supervised visitation for Mrs. Kavanaugh at the discretion of the court. The marital home and primary assets are awarded to Mr. Kavanaugh. Mrs. Kavanaugh will pay child support in the amount of... The numbers washed over me like background noise. I'd already won everything that mattered. After the hearing, I found Jess in the hallway, crying quietly while her lawyer packed his briefcase. Jess? She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Come to gloat? No, I came to tell you that despite everything, you're still the mother of my children. If you get your life together, really get it together, there might be a chance for supervised visits to become something more. Why would you do that? Because Sam and Lila deserve better than this mess, and maybe, somewhere under all the bad decisions, there's still a trace of the woman I married. She nodded, unable to speak. But Jess, if you ever put my children at risk again, If you ever bring someone like Grant into their lives, I will destroy you so completely that tonight will look like a gentle warning. Are we clear? Crystal. I walked away, leaving her to contemplate the wreckage of her choices. Outside, Pete was waiting with Sam and Lila. They ran to me and I hugged them both, feeling like the luckiest man alive despite everything we'd been through. So what now, Dad? Sam asked. Now we go home and figure out what comes next, together. Are you going to keep all those videos? Lila asked with the innocent directness of a 10-year-old. I thought about it for a moment. The videos had served their purpose, but keeping them felt like holding on to poison. No, sweetheart, I think it's time to delete the gallery. We don't need it anymore. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my chair and systematically deleted every file, every backup, every trace of Jess and Grant's affair. It felt like exorcising demons. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. Grant got 5 years, Marcus got 3. Jess moved to Portland. I typed back, good riddance to all of them. But as I hit send, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. The rage that had sustained me through months of legal battles and strategic revenge had burned itself out, leaving behind something cleaner. Peace. I looked around my house, our house, and saw not the scene of betrayal, but the foundation of a new beginning. The walls were freshly painted, the floors refinished, the security system armed but no longer needed. Tomorrow, Sam had a basketball game. Lila had a piano recital next week. Life was moving forward, leaving the wreckage of the past behind. I poured myself a scotch and raised it in a toast to the empty room. Here's to new beginnings, I said aloud, and to galleries that finally got the ending they deserved. Outside, the storm had passed, and stars were visible through the clearing clouds. The future stretched ahead like an open road, full of possibilities that didn't include betrayal, lies, or revenge. Just a father, his children, and the chance to build something better from the ashes of what came before. Funny how it all started with a gallery. I was thinking of taking up photography. But this time, I'd stick to landscapes and family portraits. Some subjects aren't worth capturing.